Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Shots Fired podcast. We are excited to talk about the arrest of Duane Davis, Keefe D, for the murder of Tupac today. But before we get started in today's episode, we want to thank our sponsors, TAC Ops. TAC Ops has been a big supporter of the show since the beginning. Guys, if you want to get signed up for any one of the three conferences, go to tacticalconference.com or swatconference.org. Get signed up for one of the three conferences. They have Nashville, Washington, D.C., New York. Mark and I will be there teaching a class at two of the three this following year. Make sure you guys get signed up.
And Kyle and I are excited to announce that we partnered full-time with the Savage Training Group as instructors. We're going to be teaching patrol survival tactics across the country. We got 4 dates coming up. December 12th, Newport Beach, California. January 29th, San Pablo, California. February 19th, Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and March 4th will be in Frisco, Texas. If you want to get signed up for that class, go to savagetraininggroup.com, get registered, and look at the additional classes that they offer.
Hey, 4-9, shot fired.
Copy, additional shot fired.
Shot fired, shot fired. Shooting at us.
Suspect shooting at officer.
Break down. He's at the base of the stairs, white t-shirt, white male.
All right, everybody's buzzing online about the arrest of Duane Davis, a.k.a. Keefe D, the rapper who shot and killed or was involved in the shooting and killing of Tupac Shakur. Was arrested this past week by Las Vegas Metro Police Department. Everybody's buzzing about it. Let's talk about it because there's a lot of people that want questions answered about why it took so long for him to be arrested in the rap community. You've got his family, Tupac Shakur's family, wanting to know why did it take over 27 years for the arrest to be made. And going back, I was a little kid when this happened, right? I remember when it occurred, but I was little. I know you had to have been in your 20s, right?
God, I'm just a little older than you, but yeah. I do remember. Yeah, 1996.
Yep. But it just, going back and doing the research on this, it sounds like a lot of people knew who the involved parties were in this whole thing and kind of how this whole thing played out.
Yeah, I actually looked into that, and I kind of discovered a couple things on that. So I did too.
Yeah, I did too in preparing for this, doing this podcast on it, because it is actually pretty interesting. And there were a lot of conspiracies when the death of Tupac happened, right? I mean, there are people that are literally saying that either the cops were involved, that Tupac was alive living on some island.
Yeah, I remember that one.
You know, that his body was swapped with somebody else, and like there were some police hitman out there that killed him. I mean, there were some crazy, outlandish stories. Yeah, stories that were going around. So
theories.
Theories, conspiracy theories. Mark, you know a little bit about that, right?
Well, you are a flat earth theorist.
So let's do this. I want to walk you guys through the chain of events of the night that he was killed and kind of what took place, the players that were involved, and we'll go from there and we'll talk about it at the end. So let me get my phone out here with my notes. Okay. So September 7th, 1996, Tupac Shakur, Suge Knight, a part of Death Row Records, went to the MGM Grand in Las Vegas to watch the Mike Tyson fight. That was a huge event. And several members of the Southside Compton Crips also attended the fight, which is who Duane Davis was a part of. So Duane Davis was a shot caller back then for the Southside Compton Crips. There was a lot of beef going on with those guys during this time. You had Death Row Records, you had Bad Boy Records, who P. Diddy was a part of. And we all know back in the 90s, you know, the Bloods and the Crips saga that went on with the riff with them. So a lot of drama going on between the two groups. And this all kind of started with Duane Davis's nephew, Orlando, who was at the mall down in LA, was jumped by a bunch of members of the Piru gangsters. They found out about it. Duane found out about it, and they were embarrassed. So now fast forward to Vegas after the jumping at the mall. Tupac and Suge Knight, after the fight, were down by an elevator, and we're going to watch this here on the video surveillance, and they see Orlando downstairs by the elevator, and they jump him. Okay, and while they're beating him up, several security guards get involved. They break up the fight. Tupac and Suge go their separate ways in the casino and leave. Duane Davis then finds out his nephew was jumped again. He's embarrassed. He wants to get revenge on Tupac. And there were rumors circulating in the media that P. Diddy, remember, who was a part of Bad Boys Record and was a part of the Crips as well, the Southside Compton Crips, basically put $1 million bounty on Tupac's head, saying he would pay somebody $1 million for the death of Tupac. He has publicly come out and denied that several times. People have called him out on it. He still denies it. Eminem sang a rap song about his involvement in this whole thing. Until this day, P. Diddy still denies that. So Duane Davis gets together with Terrence Brown, DeAndre Smith, Orlando Anderson, his nephew, and they all get together in the valet parking area in the white Cadillac, the infamous white Cadillac involved in this shooting. And Duane Davis, Keefe D, hands one of the back passengers a Glock, a handgun. They come up with a plan that they're going to wait for Tupac to come out to his car, follow him away, and shoot him. Well, they wait for over an hour in the valet parking lot. Tupac never shows up. So they decide, well, we got to leave. They go on their way. They're on their way to their own hotel for an after party of the Mike Tyson fight. On the way to their hotel, they decide to stop at a liquor store and get some Dom Perignon and some other expensive champagne, liquor, whatever else to party. So they stop off the liquor store. After they leave the liquor store, they're en route to their hotel on Flamingo Boulevard or Avenue, and they see a vehicle stopped at the intersection with none other than Tupac hanging out of the passenger side window, kind of acting a fool. He's waving at fans. He's dancing in the car, but they spot him because he's hanging out of the car. So to his own demise in this whole thing, had he probably not been hanging out of the window of the car, they would have never seen him. They didn't know that was him. They recognize him. So they decide to pull their car up, bypass all the cars at the intersection, pull their car up, and the driver, who is, let me go back to my notes here.
Suge Knight.
So Suge Knight was the driver of the car that Tupac was in. It was Suge and Tupac in their car, the black BMW. So Terrence Brown was the driver. They lock eyes with Tupac. According to them, Tupac goes to grab a handgun, and that's when the shooting happens. So somebody in the back seat, whoever Duane handed the gun off to, starts shooting into the BMW. Supposedly, Suge Knight gets hit first in the head. He goes down. There was rumors that Suge Knight used Tupac as a body shield, basically, and took the rounds. They've debunked that. They've come out and said that that's not true. He was actually shot first in the head, grazed him. And then Tupac was shot multiple times, tried jumping in the back seat, was then later transported to the hospital, died 6 days later in the hospital. So the shooting occurs. I guess where it gets interesting is the original detectives involved in this homicide went back and watched all the video surveillance. They knew who the players were involved, but they couldn't tie any one particular person to the actual shooting. So throughout the years, all those guys in that car have since been killed, except for Duane Davis, Keefe D. To this date, he's the only survivor of anyone that was in that white Cadillac. They're all gangsters. They've all been presumably probably shot and killed over their lifetime. So a lot of this has been talked about over the years. Theories have come out, and Duane Davis himself I'll let you talk about his statement with the FBI, but essentially he wrote a book. He's publicly come out and talked about this on podcasts. He's been interviewed by DJ Vlad on Vlad TV on YouTube. You guys can pull up his interviews with Duane Davis. And DJ Vlad does a good job of essentially interrogating Duane. And when Duane didn't want to answer particular questions about the shooting, DJ Vlad would refer to the book because he wrote it in the book.
So you guys are driving around, and then you hear these girls say, Tupac, Tupac.
No, we coming up, what's the name? What's that, Flamingo? Yeah, I think that's Flamingo. We was coming up Flamingo and got to the light. We was going to go drink and smoke some weed, and he happened to be hanging out the window. He was hanging out the window like he was in a parade.
Tupac.
Yeah, he was.
So what happens next?
And we just came, and shit. I ain't gonna go into the details like that, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, you got it in a book. You done played it, everything else, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Well, in the book, you said that as you're driving up towards the BMW, with Suge driving and Tupac in the passenger seat, and you said that Tupac pulled out a gun.
It looked like he was reaching, yeah. Yeah, it did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you actually see a gun?
No, shit. Once he got the reaching, I got the ducking.
So someone from your car
That's what happened.
started shooting at Tupac and Suge.
And then that got him to open up, and he would openly admit to, yeah, okay, so this is what happened. He wasn't the trigger man, but, you know, whatever, right? So he has gone out and publicly basically narrated the whole story of what happened that night. And people want to know, why did it take so long for him to be arrested? And what did you come across?
So I looked at quite a bit of that stuff, and it's interesting because it has taken a long time. But mid 2000s, he was implicated was facing life in prison for basically running a criminal enterprise and wanted for multiple murders. And he agreed to talk with the feds and basically give all the information about that shooting. And by doing that, he was given immunity. And he swore that all those papers would be his what he provided them would be shredded. There'd be no evidence of that. So he had been basically protected for a really long time because of that. But like you said, he started coming out publicly, talking on podcasts, doing interviews. He wrote his memoir. And by him starting to admit all that stuff, he basically went outside of his immunity and was admitting to that publicly, which changed the investigation where they could now say, okay, we can reopen this investigation. And that's ultimately what happened, is they were able to do that. And in the state of Nevada, like many states, but state of Nevada being one of the laws states that if you are involved in planning or give an item and it's used in a crime or a murder in this case, you're involved in that murder. And that's one of the charges. He's not being charged with the actual murder. He's being charged with providing that in the murder, because he does admit to it. And he says that publicly in the podcast, in his book, in his memoir, that he had the gun and he passed it from the front seat to the back seat for them to use that. So that's really where all this kind of transpires. And then the feds in Las Vegas earlier this year ended up serving a search warrant in Henderson, connecting him. They were trying to connect him with evidence 27 years later, but they collected all kinds of things, anything they could possibly think of, and connect him to that. And then ultimately, last week it came out public that they had arrested him, and they did basically the takedown when he was out for a walk.
Yeah. So going back to, I guess how they got the original indictment to arrest him, we'll just touch on that. And so the prosecution had to take that to a jury, and it doesn't have to be unanimous. It's not a criminal jury trial to, where all jurors have to come up with the same, guilty or not guilty or whatever. Right. So an indictment jury is different. You just have to have the majority vote. And the prosecution has to bring whatever case they have to this jury. So they voted on that. The majority voted that they felt there was enough evidence to bring criminal charges in front of a jury to convict him for this murder. Now, two things. We'll circle back to the aiding and abetting real quick and explain what that is. But for those, I guess, not in law enforcement, Duane was a shot caller in the Southside Compton Crips. And when you're a shot caller, you're making decision for the soldiers and, for all these guys in the gang world that are a lot lower than you. Like, you give them an order and they're going to carry that order out, right? So he wasn't the trigger man, but he was the one that came up with the plan. He had the firearm. He gave the firearm to one of the guys in the back seat. And so that's where he got implicated in this whole thing, because he was the shot caller. And which brings me to aiding and abetting. And I don't want you guys to take my word for aiding and abetting in the definition. Let's hear it straight from the business professor.
All right.
Is aiding and abetting as a criminal charge? Well, aiding and abetting is often called accessory to a crime, and it can be accessory before the crime occurs or accessory after the crime occurs. But generally, it means providing some sort of material support to anyone in the commission of the crime or post-commission of the crime in escaping from being caught in that manner. So it could include anything from providing someone with the materials or information necessary to carry out a crime, or after the fact, harboring them or keeping them from being found by the authorities, or facilitating their escape from capture, or even covering up information as part of an investigation. And that could also be part of other crimes such as obstruction of justice. But again, it could be considered conspiracy, and that would implicate the person in the actual commission of the crime, and they could face punishment similar to the individual actually carrying on the crime.
All right. So you just heard from the business professor, which, I mean, that was a pretty riveting video of what aiding and abetting is. So that's how Duane Davis got implicated in this whole thing. It did take forever. I think the detectives at the LA County Sheriff's Department, probably LAPD, Las Vegas Metro. I mean, those guys have worked years on this case, and I have no doubt. I know for a fact that there were homicide detectives that worked probably tirelessly on this case, because to this day, it's one of the probably most high profile unsolved murders.
Yeah.
Right. In time. So,
well, you have detectives in both agencies, the feds, a lot of them have written books on it. On their investigations.
Oh man, there's been documentaries made about it. I mean, several documentaries made about it. So it's a big deal, right? I think it's a huge deal in the rap community, because there's a lot of rappers who are all grown older now that were involved in that community back then, and those labels, Death Row, Bad Boys. There was a lot going on there, and I think for them, probably a lot of closure. I think for a lot of those, both those two different groups, and I personally think there's going to be more people that potentially could be implicated in this whole thing.
Oh, hands down for sure. But it's interesting because it touches all ages, race, all of that. Like Tupac was, and still is, an amazing rapper. I can think back in 96, and then up when I graduated high school in 1999, the song our high school voted on for the song for our high school was Changes.
Really?
Yeah. But one person ended up saying, we are not going to play that. But that's what our high school voted on. You
know what my 8th grade graduation song was voted on?
Oh, man.
The thong song. Remember that?
Did they play that?
It seriously got voted for.
Yeah, but did they play it? They didn't play it.
Absolutely not. The school refused to play it, but
same with ours.
I remember it was circulating around and we voted on the thong song, if you guys can remember that.
Yeah, but it affects all kinds of people, because you think, I mean, I listen to rap, and I've always wondered, there's all those conspiracies, there's all kinds of different people that are really interested in this, and it's finally coming to light. And you even have today, well, Kyle, a few days ago, Ice-T was coming out saying, I mean, Ice-T was a gangster. He was a rapper.
Yeah.
And he's saying, why did it take so long? Why did this take so long? And that, to me, I'm kind of humored by that, because he plays a cop on TV. So like, he should know that. But again, I think that it keeps going back to the questions of why did it take so long? Well, we are confident that most law enforcement know, because they did such an investigation, and there's so much information on it. But then also when he met with the feds and they basically kind of stopped it, Well, LAPD, the chief even said, hey, you're no longer investigating this. There's a lot of different interesting things on that, but he
screwed himself.
He did.
He screwed himself.
He came out talking, trying to sell a book, being public again, and he walked himself. But now the whole justice system starts, right? So now he's just been enough to be charged.
Not found guilty.
Nope, enough to be charged. So now he's going to have to go to court, and that starts the whole entire trial process. So I think this is when it's going to get
it could take a long time for that.
Yeah, it's going to. And I think that this is going to get and become an ongoing story because that is going to be really interesting what comes out. Because all that's going to come out because he's already. Yeah.
I would say the verdict of this trial, whenever that is going to be so publicized and probably it's going to remind me of the O.J. Simpson trial. Honestly, I think it's going to be that publicized when this whole thing is over, said and done, and the jury reaches a verdict and they're going to read it. It's going to be huge.
Look at all the. I'm not going to name them all, but Ice-T, Snoop Dogg, all those
iconic rappers in that era.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a big deal.
This is going to be pretty wild road. And
I'm almost curious. I mean, you know how it is being in law enforcement. Like, I wonder what the gang backlash, if there's going to be any gang backlashes, from this whole thing, or if he is found guilty. I mean, I don't know. That there's going to be songs made about it, and
very well made.
Interesting.
It could start.
Right. That's what I'm wondering.
It could start stuff.
This is a bigger deal than I think the ordinary person probably thinks it is, just based on that reason alone. Like, you don't know what this is going to kick off between two different gang groups, and hopefully nothing. But
I look at it making arrests and seeing arrests in Sacramento for murder. How long a gang fight, a murder, time goes by, person goes and gets convicted. And then other stuff happens again. Yeah. And then it kind of like little fires start.
Yeah. Emotions get high.
Yeah.
Whether he's found guilty or not guilty.
Yeah.
Emotions play a big role into that. So I don't know.
This is going to be super interesting. It's going to be ongoing. It's going to be a while.
Yeah. Yeah. The timeline of events of this whole thing happening really starts with a fight at the mall, which then trickles over at the Mike Tyson fight in Vegas. And the crazy thing is none of these groups have any ties to Vegas whatsoever. This is all South LA stuff that trickled over into Vegas that turned into a huge deal for Vegas. I was impressed with their press conference they put out the other day after the arrest of Duane Davis. I thought they did a good job with that press conference. I feel like Vegas actually does a really good job with all their press conferences after they have shootings or critical incident or whatever.
Yep.
They do a really good job of it. They were one of the first agencies, I think, that really kind of kicked off this whole community briefings after shootings and just being transparent, coming out with stuff. I think Vegas kind of paved the road for that for everybody else.
I do want to end on this, Kyle. I think this is a lot of people don't like law enforcement. They think there's cover-ups and stuff. But I think this, when it's all said and done, I think people are going to be able to look back and go, I think law enforcement had the investigation, did good work. There was just that point with the feds, with the immunity, that kind of stopped everything.
I think so too. I think this probably was wrapped up
a
long time ago. The investigators knew.
Yeah.
And there were LAPD cops that were freaking private security guards for Suge Knight. Like, there was a lot of conspiracy theory shit out there. Like, there's a lot involved in this whole thing. And there were LAPD cops that worked for for Death Row Records. And I mean, there's pictures of them online, wearing all red. It begs the question. It's like, well, were these cops gangsters? Like, I don't know, right? So there was there's some documentaries out there if you guys are interested that specifically talk about the officers for LAPD that were bodyguards for Suge Knight and Death Row Records and all that. So I would check it out. It's pretty interesting actually, but
well, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so we'll see how this thing plays out. I guess we just wanted to do a podcast on this. It was pretty interesting. Made headlines. Obviously, everyone's been buzzing about it. Give you a breakdown of kind of the timeline of everything that happened and why it took so long for him to be arrested. And that's why there was I think a kink in the justice system there to protect him. And to his demise, he couldn't keep his mouth shut. Yeah. Probably looking for fame at the time. He also did have cancer, and there's a speculation maybe he thought he wasn't going to live for very much longer and wanted to say what happened, and he ended up living through his cancer. So who knows? But that's biting him now. So, anyways, we've been busy. We've been traveling. It seems like at least once a month we're traveling all over the place.
Yeah, and I think by March we will have traveled to 7 states. Training.
Yeah, that's just this year. So next year 2024, we've already got, I think, 6 or 7 things lined up outside California. So we have a lot going on. A lot going on also with this podcast. We've been trying to grow this, and there's a lot of things behind the scenes, you guys, that you just quite frankly, you obviously don't see. Well, like this little light we have sitting here. That was quite dramatic, funny, getting that set up. But but business wise, right? So probably see some changes coming up with the podcast and kind of how we're operating and doing things. But if you guys have any suggestions on what you want to see, certain guests, we do have some pretty cool guests lined up.
Yeah.
You know, those are hard to get. So if you're not seeing us putting out episodes with guests every week, it's not that we're scaling back from that. It's just getting good quality guests. It's not, you know, an easy thing. And then having we're flying some of the guests in, and there's a lot. So bear with us, but, try to put out sporadic, I guess, episodes like this, and then body cam breakdown videos. We have some more of those coming.
Yep.
So, but you let us know.
And most importantly, we want to thank all of you for supporting us.
Yeah, it's been quite the crazy journey since we started this whole thing. So,
all right, wipe your tears, Kyle. We'll see everybody on the next one.